Hi, I'm John Jay, and this is The Moment of Truth. Today we have a special guest whose autobiography has been a subject of controversy ever since it was written. Please welcome Olaudah Equiano. Hello, Mr. Equiano.
Hello, Your Honor. Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. So there's no dispute that you have had a very difficult life that no one should ever have to go through. What is up for dispute, solely for clarity's sake, is your autobiography. So, Mr. Equiano, why did you write it?
Well, I wanted to evoke compassion from the hearts of the people and show them that the true horror that the slave trade has brought about.
Well, you can rest easy knowing that people have heard your story.
That's all I wanted.
Now, Mr. Equiano, there have been allegations that you have falsified some of your story. Some people claim that you were not born in Africa like you stated, but rather as a slave in South Carolina. How do you respond to these allegations?
Mr. J, the world I grew up in was one of pure inequality. I expected that people would doubt me, but it doesn't make my story any less true or any less moving.
That is a profound statement. Now I'd like to analyze some of the evidence, so let's bring out our historians.
Hello, I'm historian number 1.
Hi, I'm historian number 2.
Thanks for having us.
Historian number 1, I believe you have made a name for yourself as a person that maintains Mr. Equiano was born in South Carolina. What specific evidence do you have to support this claim?
Well, for one, there's his baptismal record at St. Margaret's Church, Westminster, dated the 9th of February of 1759, records that he was born in Carolina.
Your Honor, could I please dispute this?
Of course, go right ahead.
It has been shown that there is enough internal evidence, such as knowledge that only people from Africa would know, inside Mr. Equiano's autobiography to provide that he was born in Africa, not South Carolina. Historian number 1 is basically stating that every ounce of the first few chapters of his narrative are fabricated. A lie on that scale would be easy to spot, yet it seems by all accounts that he is telling the truth.
You know, I have to say that I'm leaning towards historian number 2. Whether or not Mr. Equiano was born in South Carolina or Africa, millions of slaves had to experience the slave trade, and his autobiography explains this very well. Historian 1's argument doesn't place emphasis on the fact that no matter if these events happened to Mr. Equiano, they did happen to millions of other people. Mr. Equiano's autobiography is a beacon of light that shines truth upon a horrible endeavor that has forever and will always be a stain on America. Any more disputes?
Equiano claims to have been born in the village of Asaka in Africa. All attempts to find Asaka have failed. This brings me to the conclusion that Mr. Equiano is lying.
I would like to interject that modern scholars acknowledge that villages' names change. Villages move or disappear altogether. Just because it doesn't exist now doesn't mean it didn't exist then. Also, whatever your findings are, it takes away no historical value from Mr. Equiano's life story.
Mr. Equiano, how do you feel about this?
Well, it's natural for the human psyche to try and protect itself from the realization that it can commit an atrocity on the scale of slavery. Therefore, I understand that people are trying to find evidence that would disprove my account. Slavery isn't an event that you can just forget about. It will be a scar among the hearts and minds of Americans for generations to come. It's a scar that I have myself. Perhaps it's a scar that should remain. One that will help future generations learn from the mistakes of the past. I stand by my account. It's a story that must be told.
When Mr. Equiano writes in his autobiography about his life in Africa and the trip to America, he isn't nearly as descriptive and specific as he is about the rest of his life. He doesn't even name his sister or his mother and father.
Mr. Equiano's description of the land in Africa is one of the fullest around, even compared to the other slaves' descriptions of the land. And furthermore, Mr. Equiano's life in Africa was a traumatizing time for him. He was so young when he was torn away from all he knew. How can you expect him to describe in depth all the memories I'm sure he tried to suppress?
I think I shall have to agree with historian number 2. Mr. Equiano's life in Africa was long ago, and there are other factors not being put into account. What he does say about his life in Africa is horrifyingly accurate. Now I believe that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, historians, for coming by and helping us out. Now, Mr. Equiano, I can't even imagine how hard a life you've had. No matter where it started, slavery is quite possibly the biggest blight on American soil. I can't stress enough how important it was that you had the courage to write the truth. For our audience today, I would like you to leave the show without a doubt that Mr. Equiano is a great man, that he had to go through terrible times. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Equiano. I hope you all tune in next week.